Okay, hello and welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we normally do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it runs for about 3 hours. Uh, the past few weeks, I am just so sorry, you guys. It was not an intentional thing for me just to fall off the planet like that. I've had a lot of stuff going on, and I kept thinking that I would be able to be here and that I'd be okay. And I just have had physical issues and just a lot of stress in my life. And uh, the past two Wednesdays, I was totally fine. I'd get home and I'm just gonna take a quick nap and then I'll be good to go. And then I just ended up way oversleeping both times. So I just really apologize. And then for the Tuesday live streams, Angie has been out of town. So although I did oversleep and miss the one yesterday. So tomorrow we are set to oh, thank you, Tyler. That's the nicest thing anybody's said to me in a long time. He says, I stopped swiping on Tinder to find out where you've been. That's cute. Oh, what was I going to say? The book club. Book club, I believe, is supposed to be tomorrow night, but I'm going to have to reschedule because I'm also going out of town tomorrow morning. My cousin is getting married. Yay, him. And so I'm going to be going to his wedding. I'll be back on Sunday. But next week, everything that has been so incredibly stressful should be back to normal and doable and all of that. So yes, I apologize. I really need to get better about knowing my limits and communicating them. But I think that's going to start with me communicating, being honest with myself. So yeah, that's not, I feel terrible for just disappearing on you guys like that. And it's not the kind of person I want to be. And it's not a pattern that I want to make. So anyways, so we are here. We're going to go probably a little bit shorter tonight because I like you said, I just got out of the shower. I've got to pack and laundry and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, we'll do stuff. So I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's okay, you know, we're glad you're back, no worries, this kind of thing. I know, but I also want to acknowledge, I know a lot of people set their alarm and that they're really looking forward to this, or that this is their only kind of support during this time. So I understand that. And I know, I've been there where it's just difficult. So I'll try to figure out, if this happens again, I'll try to figure something else out to have maybe somebody else do a live stream or something. Thank you. James says, hair still on fleek though. LOL, that's funny on several different levels. But thank you. Yeah, with curly hair, you never know how it's gonna go when it starts to dry. So it's dry to about here and then the rest is wet. So JJ says, hi, I'm just joining. Not a problem, Dana. Funny, the thumbnail on the last live stream looks like you went to sleep and you just never woke up for 2 weeks. LOL. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, I could see how you might wonder about that. Ooh, I like that, Slavic Princess. You are so spot on. She says, Dana, I just want to make a profound statement here. Self-love is so unbelievably important. Once you are accustomed to self-loving behaviors, toxicity of any kind from others feels repulsive. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's really amazing how quickly that can happen. You know, once we get used to feeling good, well, it's amazing how quickly we can get used to feeling good And it's amazing how quickly we can get used to feeling bad or being under stress. And years can go by. And then when things shift, we're like, oh my gosh, how did I do that? How did I live like that for during that time? I mean, it's absolutely wild. So yeah, that self-love, even in small ways, it just makes such a big difference. Like, for example, even though I've had a ton of stress lately, and that's obviously still something I need to reflect upon and get figured out, but it's so much better than it was a year ago or 3 years ago or 6 years ago or what have you. But some here, just for an example, some of the shifts that I have made in my life that I've noticed make a huge difference, and I don't notice it on a daily basis now, but I notice it when I am around other people. So, for example, don't, um, I very rarely watch TV, and if I do, it's like I binge Netflix, like Stranger Things or what have you, all in one night. I don't listen to the news. I kind of get news every now and again from YouTube or whatever, but I don't have it on in the background. And I listen to podcasts that I really enjoy. Oftentimes, they're about completely different topics than the seriousness of this. Um, these little things like that, or uh, making sure my car is cleaned out, making sure that my environment is relatively tidy, and making my bed. I mean, that just makes such a huge difference to have these little things in order, these little ways of valuing yourself. And it's amazing when you can get used to that. And then when you don't have it, and you realize, oh my gosh, this makes such a huge impact in my mood and my stress level and everything else. So thank you so much for bringing that up, Slavic Princess. I think that was you're just so spot on about that. Rick is here. Welcome. He says, hi, everyone. I'm fortunate to make it tonight. Earbuds in while working and sporadically looking in. Well, welcome. And Slavic Princess says again, so to everyone in this chat, please never give up. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. You know, after times like this where the pain is so intense and it's easy to feel, and it's understandable to feel so profoundly broken that we'll never get back to our old selves or never be able to move forward from this. And I just want to remind you guys that many of your best days are still ahead of you, and that you truly can rebuild your life, and it can be even better than it was before. This is absolutely possible. So please just know that, and getting a clear idea of a vision of what you want out of your life and what do you want in your life can help. That kind of gives you a direction to steer into. And like Slavic Princess had said, making self-care, self-love, kind of the cornerstone of that is huge. Um, Bringing peace into your life, things that nourish you, people that nourish you. That's a good direction to head in. See, New Beginnings says, why do I feel like the narcissist after being, and I think you mean dumped, after being dumped, and he moved on within 2 weeks after a 9-year relationship. Well, let's talk about that. I don't know. Why do you feel like the narcissist? Do you have any ideas? Are you feeling that it's somehow your fault that the relationship ended? And then while New Beginnings is hopefully answering that, I just wanted to address E-Rock here, who says, I feel physically sick right now from the abuse I just experienced. Somehow managed to make my therapy appointment and articulate what was happening. Well, I think that is a huge victory in and of itself, that you were able to make a therapy appointment and articulate what was happening. So that's tremendous self-care on your end. And it can be incredibly difficult to articulate what happened. There's a lot of bravery in that too, to be able to share that with another person. Let's see here. Tanitria says, a coworker that's obviously a narcissist tries to make me speak to him. He even follows me at different times, but never says anything. During break times, basement vending machines, it's just really weird. Yeah, and it might just be the challenge, like the power struggle for him, to see if, like, why won't this woman talk to me? Especially if he considers himself to be really charming and likable, and especially if other people consider him to be really charming and likable, and he doesn't have this issue with other people until of course they kind of see whatever behavior he has more clearly. But the fact that you're distancing, he probably finds that unsettling. Xiao Yu, welcome. Hello. I hope you guys were doing okay during the heat wave that passed through over the weekend. I can only imagine what it was like with some of you guys in different parts of the world where air conditioning isn't a common thing. I can only imagine how absolutely sweltering it must have been. Okay, great question. Xiao Yu asks, I have a question about dumb like a fox strategy. I still don't get it. There was one video on it and that's it. Okay. And she says, can you talk about how to use this strategy effectively and what exactly is it? So, and then I see New Beginnings answered why she's feeling like the narcissist. Or I think New Beginnings is a she. I can't tell. Because the little pictures are like very, very, very tiny. So, okay, so I apologize about that. So Xiao Yu, so the concept of dumb like a fox is, so there's all kinds of different ways to interact with a problematic person. We have no contact, we have low contact, and we have gray rock. And then then there's the dumb like a fox strategy. This was something that somebody in the chat came up with one day, and I just think it's absolutely brilliant. So dumb like a fox is where you know what's going on and you see this person's behavior clearly, but for whatever reason, you feel like it's not a good idea to act any differently than you've ever acted with them before. So you're intentionally not doing gray rock. You're doing gray rock, maybe, I guess a better way to say it is you're doing gray rock emotionally, like internally. So you have disconnected from them, but you're still giving the responses that they're accustomed to, the reactions that they're accustomed to. You're still in as much communication as you once were with them. And the whole purpose of this is generally because they might be dangerous otherwise. So you're acting dumb, like, hey, I don't know what's going on. things are just the usual. We fight, whatever, however the dynamic normally was, that you're not on to them. So acting dumb like a fox because foxes are really smart. Does that help clear that up? So there's definitely people in situations out there that this is a good strategy for, if somebody is really afraid, afraid for their life, and they don't want this other person to have any idea that they're getting ready to leave, or that they're basically getting ready to leave. So they're staying in regular communication, which might be hours upon hours every day. They might be doing whatever they need to do in order to just get out of there. Yeah. So, okay, New Beginnings says, I feel like I was the one not doing enough, giving silent treatment and always bringing him down. Well, I think every single partner of an abusive person that I've ever met feels that exact same way. Because an abusive relationship, no matter what kind of abuse is involved, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, financial, physical, spiritual, an abusive relationship is a manipulative relationship. And these things are very difficult to see clearly if we're in the middle of it, especially because, again, this stuff's not taught. And it's very common for other people around the person who's in a relationship like this to justify the abusive person's behavior. And because there's always kind of, you can somewhat, okay, if you kind of squint your eyes, like you can kind of see the logic that they're using when they get upset sometimes. And that's why people are like, well, if I had, gosh, if I hadn't have brought up, if I hadn't have burned dinner, she wouldn't have yelled at me. If I hadn't have had to work late, then, he wouldn't have hit me. If I hadn't have, I brought up his brother, and that was a real sensitive topic. I should have known better. Next time I won't do that. And so then we're thinking, oh, it's us, because, and the abuser's thinking that too. It's like, well, look what you made me do. You brought up all of these topics, or you did these things, and this made me explode. You bought, you're wearing makeup, so you must be, I thought you were cheating on me. You're dressing too sexy. You're, I don't like your friends. That's why I yelled at you, or that's why I keep following you around to see where you are. In their mind, all of their behavior is due to something that we're doing. But what both people in these relationships are missing is that it's okay for the abuser to feel how they feel. It's okay for them to be angry and upset and jealous and want to control things. They can feel how they feel, but it's not okay for them to act that way towards another person. Just like it's okay for somebody to be upset and angry, but it's not okay for them to just unleash, to become verbally abusive or physically abusive. It's okay to, there's socially acceptable ways to handle these things. And then there's socially destructive ways to handle these emotions that come up. And here's the thing, because this is not taught, it's very common for people to realize, oh, okay, that gives me some clarity. That's what was going on. I was, he or she was saying, yeah, I started cussing you out because, you changed your college major. And so therefore I cussed you out because you did that. Or you forgot to change the oil in the car, and that's why I cussed you out and yelled at you and put you down. And then they realize, oh, okay, you can forget, things happen, right? You forgot to change the oil in the car. That doesn't make it okay for somebody to unload on you verbally and physically, any way, shape, or form. Like there always needs to be that level of dignity and respect with the other person. But again, because the stuff's not taught, for targets of abuse, it's really common for them to hear what I'm saying and for them to be like, oh my gosh, you know what? I never thought of it that way. And I'm realizing that I haven't done that perfectly either. Like there's a lot of things that that um, you know, I would get to the breaking point and I would yell and cuss or would hit or would do things out of frustration. And that's when these relationships, they get to kind of this fevered pitch, because there's the abuser's mindset is one of um, power and control. It's this domination over, right? Like, it's going to be my way or the high, basically it's going to be my way or you're going to pay for it. That's kind of the abuser mindset, right? Versus the target mindset is more of, I really want to make this relationship work. I want to work towards a solution. And so what they start doing is then they start silencing those parts of themselves that the abuser doesn't like. This is where these walking on eggshells starts. So, and this, it's, once we're more aware of this, then you see it. And so then I think it can help to kind of figure out, to sort through those emotions of, okay, this guilt that I feel, or this questioning that I feel, and was it me? Was it this other person? What happened? Did I cause this? Did I drive them away? It can help to make that more clear. Does that help? Oh, thank you. Life in the OC says, oh, and I just lost it. Okay, hold on. Let me see. I, oh, shoot. I am gonna, well, I don't remember exactly what it was, but Life in the OC says, Dana, I'm recently out of a narcissistic relationship and your videos have been helping. So thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad, and I'm glad that you're here. So let's see. Yes, and Bonnie had mentioned, yes, and when you distance from a narcissist, they will often retaliate in a much hateful way. Yes. Tanitra is saying the guy at work, yeah, others consider him charming, she says, but I don't. Yeah, it's amazing when you um, see things clearly. I was on topic, but kind of off topic. It's along the same lines, I guess. I took an art class. This was, I don't know, close to 10 years ago. My mom is an artist. And so anyways, she really wanted me to take this pastel class with her. So anyway, we took this class and I had never had a formal art class before. And I was so blown away by all of the different colors that these artists were seeing, because my eyes weren't used to thinking about color like that. And so we were doing these different kind of landscape scenes, you know, and realizing, oh my gosh, the grass isn't just green. There's beige in it. There's like a rose color. There's some browns. There's some purples. And the trees, they're not just like a forest green. There's like a lime green in there. There's some navy blue in there. There's black. There's all different colors here. And I never noticed it before. And ever since that class, I can't unsee that. And almost every single day when I'm taking a class in a different city right now, when I'm making that drive and seeing all of just kind of a lot of the countryside, I guess, of Michigan, I am like, so I almost get in an accident every single time because I'm always off looking at all of the different colors of the grass and the trees and how beautiful it is. And if there's storm clouds that you can see way off in the distance, like, oh my gosh, there's so much more here that I never saw before. And it's very much along the same lines as with people. Like when you start seeing all of these different kind of shades of behavior, of what is healthy and what is problematic, and what works for you and what doesn't, it's just your eyes are open, and you see it versus another person who is still thinking kind of like how I was saying with that art class, like, oh, the grass is green, the sky is blue. Like things are very kind of cut and dry, and you just don't see all of the shades in between. But when you start to really understand this kind of behavior, you start seeing it so much more clearly, which can be a little crazy making because if other people don't like, see what you're seeing, had somebody told me, "Oh yeah, there's like peach and rose and navy blue and outside and in these plants," I would have looked right at it and told them, "There's no way. I don't know what you're looking at, but you're off your rocker." Because I couldn't see it at the time, and now I do. So it's kind of this awakening, I think, to seeing the world and other people's behavior clearly. Um, let's see here. Yeah, isn't it neat? Bonnie was saying, she says, Dana, I took a lot of art classes. I used to love the shadows and the gradations. Yeah, I was watching, oh, I don't know. I'd fall down some holes in YouTube. I was watching Ink Master. Like, I don't know. It's fascinating to see these people tattoo and how good they are. And anyways, real quick. So one of them was giving a tattoo of a portrait of a little boy. And it was good. But when they were explaining it, I left with a whole new appreciation for tattoo portraits, especially of children, because they were saying, children's faces don't have age lines like an adult face does. And so it's so much more difficult to convey expression and to make them look human and not like a doll. And seeing that and then seeing this artist's work, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, she really is so talented. You just see it through a different set of understanding, I guess. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Sebastian says, after being ghosted twice in 2 years by two people, I feel like trash. I am alone now with zero people in my social circle. My family are narcissists, and I never see them because of that. I know it can be incredibly painful when we suffer loss after loss like that, when you have this kind of compounded heartbreak. And, you're not alone in that. I think there's a lot of people, myself included, who have been through something very similar, and it is absolutely devastating, and you have every right to be devastated. There's something that a concept I'd like to talk a little bit about. Um, there was, and I forget what uh, video, a friend of mine had recommended a video, oh, having to do, I, I'll have to get her name. Her first name's Michelle. I can't remember her last name. I think it was this gal. Anyways, it was on YouTube. This video about the difference between the adult chair and kind of the wounded inner child, and noticing which part of ourselves we're relating and interacting with the world in. And so, for example, let's say two people treat us poorly, right? Their behavior is absolutely selfish and atrocious and just really hurtful. If we're internalizing that and we're like, gosh, it's me, I'm trash. I'm just so unlovable. And, um, you know, we're really we're taking all of this so personally. Oftentimes that's more of the wounded child that's talking. And versus being, for the healthy, well-adjusted adult self, is able to realize, you know what, their behavior is a reflection of them. And it's not a reflection of me. Yes, I'm incredibly hurt. Anybody would be if they were to experience something like that, but I'm not going to internalize this. I still, because my self esteem comes from within. I know that there's still a lot of things that are good and right about me. I have worth, I have value because I am a living creature here on this planet. There's their actions define them, they don't define me. And so that's more of how that healthy adult self would interpret this. So they're still going to have hurt feelings, but they're not letting those, you probably heard me say before, you're keeping your hurt feelings and your self-worth in two different buckets. So don't let those, try your best to not let the hurt feelings bucket spill over into the self-worth bucket, because it's, you got two people that didn't appreciate you for who you are, and a whole family of, it sounds like a bunch of dysfunction going on. So, um, but there is, uh, doing the right kind of self-care and, uh, spending time in groups like this and reaching out to people and doing what you need to do in order to kind of feel validated and heard is really fantastic self-care. So sometimes it takes us a little while to figure out how to truly value ourselves and how to spot problematic behavior and how to really hold our standards for the kind of people that we have in our life, especially if we've been raised in a den of dysfunction. Because if that's what a person's used to, then you know what's um, what's normal is what's problematic. And it can be kind of difficult to figure out, well, when am I being mistreated? You know, if that's what we've known for so long. Have you, I think we spoke about the website meetup.com before. Is that something that you've looked into in your area? Just out of curiosity? Um, I am going to mispronounce your first name for sure, so I will just say your last name because out of out of not wanting to butcher your name. So Patel um, asks, are there groups like this for BPD relationship recovery? Thank you. And that's a good question. I'm sure that there are. Your best bet would probably be to Google it. Uh, a lot of it's the same kind of behavior. Um, so I think any support group for these types of relationships with a person whose behavior is so extreme like this, where there's that push pull, there's the, I love you, I hate you, the uh, just the there's so much overlap between a lot of this behavior, and it might be for different reasons. Borderline personality disorder has more to do with fears of abandonment, where narcissism has to do with uh, kind of selfishness and entitlement and kind of a lack of self, I guess, or lack of self-esteem. But a lot of the behaviors are the same. Um, that is terrible, Sebastian. I agree. He says the worst part is being ghosted when you've only had two girlfriends in your life, and I am 33 years old. Yes, that is incredibly painful. when we can get to a place where we're more healed, because that pain is very intense. And, for our experiences with love have only been pain, that can take a little while, a while for a person to kind of recover and get their footing again and learn to trust and open up themselves to other people. But one of the, I guess if there's a silver lining to any of this, it's realizing that um, these relationships can provide so much contrast for us and show us what we don't want the next time around. Different character traits and a partner, the fact that, again, like you're here, you're talking to other people about learning about healthy communication and really getting clear on like what a healthy relationship is and what that looks like in motion is absolutely huge. So my guess is that, once you're a little bit more healed from this, from here on out, the friendships and the relationships that you have are going to be much more solid and have more depth and are going to be, you're going to be a lot more honed in on what is for you and what is things that you don't want in your life. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. That's great advice, Elizabeth. She says, to anyone feeling lonely, there are healthy enough people out there, healthy enough to consider them part of maybe an external circle of trust. Baby steps and see if any deserve to enter an inner circle. I love the way that you phrased that. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is with finding I like the healthy, the way you phrased that was just so spot on in so many different ways. The healthy enough people is fantastic because it's not about finding these perfect people out there because we're all flawed, right? We've all got our own issues and stuff that we're working through and all of this. But the healthy enough comes in where there's enough of the foundational pieces at play where you can actually communicate effectively with them and there is that respect and dignity. And so if there's some of those, the major foundational pieces there, as life happens, as you get to know this person, as you're sharing yourself with them and your past and all of that, and they're doing the same, this is when that trust starts to grow because you're learning, how does this person respond to things that I'm sharing with them? And how is our communication? If are they going to get upset every time I have my feelings hurt, or I don't see things eye to eye with them, or I have some sort of issue or concern? How receptive are they? And are we able to talk things through, even if they don't agree with me, right? Even let's say, for example, they tell a joke, what they mean as a joke, I get offended or upset by it, or I just take it completely the wrong way. And it was maybe it wasn't even a joke, it was a statement they made. I take it way the wrong way. I bring it up and they're able to actually listen and then we're able to discuss it. And they're either able to say, oh boy, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you didn't like jokes like that. I won't tell you anymore along those lines. Or, boy, no, that's totally not what I meant by that statement. I am so sorry that it landed like that. That was definitely not my intention. And they're, instead of being defensive and then arguing with you about it, they're able to just acknowledge, acknowledge how you feel, and you're able to at least discuss it. Even if they're like, I really did nothing wrong, you totally took that in a way that was not even on my radar. But they're still respectful about like hearing you out and listening to why this upset you, these kinds of things. So a lot of it, when we find these healthy enough people that are able to communicate in a way that works for us and that we're able to, you know, communicate with them in a way that works, then that's where, this is how we find out if they're like emotionally safe people, and if the relationship that we can have with them is an emotionally safe relationship, that we can open up to them and be received appropriately. And when issues come up, because they will, then we're able to come to some sort of, we're able to talk about it instead of trying to either erase parts of ourselves or silence parts of ourselves because we don't want to rock the boat, or we, don't push everything deep down inside and then it comes out, we just explode, or, things like this. So, hi, Agatha. She says, I'm just stopping by to say hello. Yes, I figured I would go for about an hour tonight. Agatha was one of quite a few people that have been texting and messaging me and trying to get me out of my spiral that I was going in here. And she called me the other day and she's like, you just need to take some time off. You just need to be honest with yourself and take some time off. And I had agreed, and then I didn't. Then I came on tonight. But yeah, and solutions focus, I need to figure out how to do that. Solutions focus says it's all good. You can always do a YouTube post to announce when you're out. I don't know how. That sounds ridiculous. You would think I would know by now, but I don't. I just need to figure it out. And she says, Dana, where is the dog? He is with one of his dads in the living room. He's darling. He's a little chihuahua, little chubby chihuahua. He's so cute. I will see. His name's Roman. He might possibly be the love of my life. I'm not gonna lie. He is darling. He is so cute. Jack says, oh, I thought Dana was home now. The dog was at our friend's house. Yes, so I was dog sitting for some friends. They are still overseas, they're in Europe. It was me and another friend that were alternating, watching their dog in their house and staying over there. So I was over there for about 2 weeks. And then I've got this class that I've been taking, which is about an hour and a half away from where I was living in Michigan. And so it was so stressful because I was basically driving 3 hours a day. And I'm going to be up here for the next 2 semesters. And anyways, in good weather, it's a 3-hour round trip every day. And I just was too stressful. It was too much of a drive. And sometimes I would drive all that way, get up here, I would have one client, and then I'd go all the way back. So it was exhausting and it was just eating up my time. And so I decided to rent a room up here in Mount Pleasant. So I'm basically just going to be, basically moving up here. So I can't keep doing that drive. So that's one of the many things that's been going on. Let's see. Jack was saying he feels that community mental health is a ghetto, especially in rural areas. Our last therapist was DBT trained, and DBT did help us, but many therapists are poorly trained. Well, I used to work at a community mental health, and they do vary from, city to city for sure. And there's many challenges with community mental health in general. And one of them has to do with funding, and there's oftentimes high turnover. So a lot of the therapists that are there, well, even nurses, um, but therapists, I think, especially the case managers, their client load is just, it's extensive and it's exhausting, and they're doing oftentimes full needs for people, trying to line up housing and jobs and just all kinds of stuff. And so I think it just wears a lot of them out really quickly. And yeah, so that's there. Like I said, many challenges with the community mental health organization. So I can understand from like a patient point of view how that would be really frustrating. Because I wish there was more funding available and that it was spent in different ways so that people could get the services that they need. And yeah, and as far as the training goes, I would agree. There's definitely a lot of holes in that system. And I'm not saying by any stretch that I have all the answers. I for sure don't. I don't know what the solution is. I guess a lot of it would probably start, honestly, with talking to people about what's been working for them and what hasn't been working for them, and then trying to figure out what they need. So I guess along those lines, if you are looking for a therapist or a life coach or whoever, it can be helpful to guide them as much as. Here's one of the challenges with therapy, though, is first off, it's communication, right? So trying to get another person who most likely has a very different life experience than us or than you, or you know what I mean? And so trying to get them to understand what you've been through, like the world in your eyes through your experiences, is going to be a challenge. That's kind of hurdle number one. And then, you know, I guess kind of, if they've never lived through certain things, or if they've never studied certain things, because a lot of the stuff is still not taught, then they're still going to be struggling to understand. And so that really opens the door for a lot of, unintentional, but re-victimization and miscommunication and well-intended bad advice. So something that can help is, because these hurdles are just inherently there whenever we're trying to work through stuff with another person, whoever that other person might be, is to let them know, okay, you know what? Here's the clarity that I do have, and here's what's worked in the past, and here's what hasn't worked in the past. So for example, you might say something like, I had this one therapist, and he was so great. He was really spot on about, I really felt like he heard me and that he listened and that he wasn't judging me. And he gave me homework assignments to do at the end of every session, or at the end of every session, he also would ask me, what if I had any aha moments during the session. And that really helped me to kind of pick out or to remember, yeah, like that was a significant thing for me. Like I really liked that we did these things together. And then, I had this other therapist, and man, I really didn't like her at all. She just, she talked about herself a lot. She, I don't know. I felt judged. She was always kind of asking me all of these questions, and I just felt like she was challenging me, or thought I was being difficult, or that she didn't believe me. And that just didn't feel safe to me. And, so getting really clear up front can help the next person, the therapist or the life coach or whoever that you're going to work with the next time around. Like, I'd like to do more of this and less of this, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Bonnie says, LOL, Dana, that sounds like one of mine. I had to dump her. Any therapist that makes you feel worse is definitely one to run away from. Yeah, finding rapport, finding a therapist that you have a good rapport with and that you can have a good relationship with is so, so key in the healing process, because you're basically kind of trying to run a three-legged race with them. So there's got to be that connection with, okay, can we work together, and do you get me, and can we kind of be in sync? Like, are we setting goals? Are we working towards the same goals? And are we able to communicate effectively? And are we able to have a healthy relationship? Um, is a big part of it. And sometimes it does take going to a few different people to see if you can find one that you really click with. Agatha says, do we do book club tomorrow, or is it rescheduled? We're going to have to reschedule for, I think, next week, but I'll send a message out to you guys to touch base to see what day and time. If we can do next Thursday at 6:30, that would be great. So I don't know. Let me know. I'll message you guys on Facebook. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, Zachary, and you bring up a really great point. He says, my current therapist is CBT trained and I like her very much, but sometimes she challenges me way too much when I'm explaining covert abuse that's happening. And that's one of the concerns that I have with CBT, is when it comes to, it's very easy to unintentionally minimize, invalidate, gaslight even somebody's experience with anything, because CBT is all about, okay, we're going to change your thinking so you can change your behaviors. And sometimes a person doesn't need to change their thinking, they just need to be validated. Like, yeah, that actually, if this is a painful situation, this actually just is a painful situation. Like, I don't want to reframe it, I don't want to look at it any differently, I don't want to, I just need to acknowledge that this happened, especially with abuse, because there's so much manipulation involved and confusion over what's going on that it can really add to it. And I've seen this happen. Sorry, I'm so uncomfortable. I've seen this happen so many different times where different people treat the dynamic of an abusive relationship as, it's like a relationship issue. Like, well, what if this person didn't really mean that? Or what if they're acting, what if, they had a bad childhood, or, like, let's just talk about dignity and respect, and we'll try to get them, they need to treat you this way. And, it's like, okay, there's just all kinds of blurred boundaries there with what we can and can't change, and what is our responsibility, what isn't our responsibility. We didn't make anybody treat us a certain way, and it's not okay for another person to be manipulative or abusive and these kinds of things. If you're comfortable with your therapist, and this would be something I would just encourage, I think really can help to take that therapeutic relationship deeper, is to give them feedback and to say, just like you said, Zach, I really love so much of what you're doing, but when you're challenging the way that I'm thinking regarding different forms of covert abuse that's happening or that's happened, I feel like it's minimizing my experience, and my experience has already been invalidated and minimized. And I don't need you to fix it. I just need somebody to hear me. This is one of the ongoing things I've really kind of spearheaded in this one class that I'm in, is about exactly that. Just letting people speak their truth and giving them space to do that. Because especially a lot of CBT therapists, they really like, or solutions focused, really want to let's kind of line up the problems and then we'll knock them down. Right? Like that's what we're going to do. We're just moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. That happened in the past. That's fantastic. Like there's a time and place for that, but there's also a time and place for a person that needs to talk through what happened so that they can better understand it and that they can be believed and that they can just get that validation and clarity and just to have somebody acknowledge, yes, that sounds incredibly hurtful. That's painful. That was not okay that you were treated that way. We all need that acknowledgement. I think of it very much along the same lines as like a death. If somebody died, we wouldn't tell them, well, okay, but that was in the past. You've talked about this death now twice. So now what about you? What about you? How are you going to move forward? We would never do that to somebody who is grieving the death of a loved one. So why do we do it when people are grieving the loss of a relationship or being abused? Or probably even a better parallel would be if a person was out of a cult. If they got out of a cult, there would be this whole deprogramming time involved in therapy, and there would be this ability to let them just verbally ventilate and talk it through and gain that understanding. And there would be that support. There wouldn't be like, well, okay, but you don't want to live in the past, and we need to set some goals and move forward. And how are you going to do things next time? And how are you going to avoid being in a cult next time? And all of this, we would never treat somebody that was in a cult like that. So why do we do that with people that have been in an abusive relationship? Because it's basically the same thing. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't have all the answers by any stretch, but I think it's definitely worth a, I wish we could get people studying this and figuring out, okay, well, what works and what doesn't work, and what are some really good therapeutic approaches for this. There's trauma-focused CBT, but that's generally only done for children and adolescents. I don't know why it's not done for adults. Okay. Let's see, let me scroll up here. Okay, James is saying, hey, ban that guy. I just put in timeout. Okay, I don't think I can because he's timed out, but I'll look for him. I'll look for him when he comes back online. Let's see here. Kelly says, this is my worst birthday ever. Thanks for being here. Well, happy birthday, Kelly. I hope that you can find some joy today and maybe make tomorrow a good day. Get a cupcake and just take some time for you. Yeah, Zachary says, yeah, Dana, thanks. I've been thinking about doing that. I'm going to give it a try. Yeah, Zachary, most therapists really, unless you've lived it, it's really difficult to understand it. And I would just explain it as best as you can. Yeah, it's so challenging. Mala is saying with her therapist, she said she would let me blurt it all out and then asked me how I felt. But what I was searching for was advice. And I kept asking her, what do you think I should do? And she would say, well, what do you think you should do? And that's there's so many challenges that can be present in these situations, because I can see where your therapist was coming from, right? Because she's wanting you to reclaim your power and autonomy in your life and figure out, okay, what do you think? Like, where are you in this process? What decision, you know what's best for you, and that your therapist doesn't have all of the answers. That needs to come from within you, because if you decide something and it doesn't work out, or even if it does work out, um, the therapist can't get credit for that. Like, you need to get credit for that, or to have accountability for that. So I can see where she was coming from, to try to like empower you and get you to be self-reflective and to think about what is in your best interest. But I can also see your point of view, because when a person is lost in the fog like this, it's sort of like, hey, my highest and best thinking isn't going to get me out of this. Like, I don't know what I don't know, and I need some guidance here. So there definitely needs to be like a psychoeducation component, where the discussion about, boundaries, standards, deal breakers, um, so many things, I think need to be at a minimum, like they need to be part of like the curriculum, I guess, for lack of a better term, like the curriculum or the treatment plan for people that have gone through an abusive relationship. Because waiting for them to stumble across it, or to come up with it, or to pull it out of themselves it could take years, if they ever even get there. I never got there in therapy. And that was one of the reasons I got so frustrated, because I was like, hey, I feel like I'm wandering through the desert here. Following Moses. Like, do you know where we're going? Because I don't know where we're going. And uh, yeah. So I feel like there really needs to be more of a structured treatment protocol for this, for those exact reasons. Okay, let's see. Julie, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here, but she says, I'm Rosemary. I'm an alter. I'm 8 years old. Is it okay for me to come here? Yes, it is okay for you to be here. So welcome. Okay, let's see. People are talking about just kind of their frustrations with therapy in general here. And I really feel like that communication component it's something that's, again, it's not something that's discussed with most therapists. Don't bring it up, but I really feel that it's really important, because it's so easy to 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 be in the counseling chair and to think, oh yeah, I'm really getting through to this person, or to be completely misreading the situation, or to just be grasping at straws. And if that person, the client, isn't comfortable, or if they just think, oh, you know what, well, she just must know best because she's the counselor in the room, and there isn't this conversation about, hey, you know what, if I'm really off base with, like, I'm human too, so if I'm really off base about something, or if there's something that you want to cover, or if there's questions that you have, let's talk about this. Like, this is going to be a relationship that we have together, so I want to make sure that your time here is well spent. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or frustrations, it's valid, and it's most likely going to happen, because basically going to be running this three-legged race together. And those things rarely start off smooth. So once I get a better feel for what's this feedback from you, like what's working for you, then I can start adapting my approach to give you more of what you're needing. But what happened, it's sort of like, when people go to a restaurant, right? And they get food and it's terrible. I think we've all done this, right? We get food and it's terrible, and what do we do? The waitress comes over. Okay, how was everything? Oh, it was good. It was good. Thanks. We're fine. We're fine. And then the waitress leaves, and everybody's like, "Man, that was awful. I'm never going there again. The service was terrible. The food was dry. Took forever." And they're just so unhappy, but they never said anything. And it's very similar with therapy. Is people are uncomfortable with telling the truth because they don't want to be rude, or they kind of think, well, maybe maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not really getting anywhere in therapy because I've got all these issues and it's just difficult and I'm a tough nut to crack, kind of a thing. But more often than not, my guess is it's just that lack of communication about what's working and what's not working is what's really missing there. Okay. Mike, welcome. I don't know if he'd asked more beforehand, but we'll just address this. He says, I think I need to listen to this. I'm afraid to bring someone into my life. I'm afraid of what she will do. Can you talk more about that? Like what she would do in terms of what? Um, Anger, he says anger and screams, and that she belittles him in front of people. Well, I can understand why you would be afraid of how she would act if how she acts is hurtful like that. So, yeah, he says, yep, always hateful. And is this woman like a girlfriend or a friend or? Julie is talking to Slavic Princess, or I should say Rosemary is talking to Slavic Princess and says, my mama says the bullies said the mean things so they could hurt me and not feel bad. And Slavic Princess says, well, your mama is right. Yeah. Yeah, honey. When people say mean things to you, it's a reflection of them. It's not a reflection of you. So it's not okay for them to talk to you like that, but um, you know, when we are a happy person, happy people see the good in other people and they don't get so disturbed by anything that they don't like. Whereas bullies and people that are very unhappy people feel the need to go around tearing other people down so they can feel better about themselves. And that's not okay, and you didn't deserve to be treated like that. Nobody does. Mike says, I sold my home to live with her. He says, I have a life deed to a few acres here, built a log cabin next door. It's just been awful. Oh my goodness. How long have you been in this situation? It sounds like a while. Thank you, Zachary. He says, I'm halfway through your book, The Narcissist's Playbook. He says, now that's a game changer. I am so glad to hear that. I will be so curious what your thoughts are with the last half, because that really lays out and really some important shifts in healing and kind of the process that I have noticed that most people, myself included, tend to go through. So please let me know your thoughts on that, and if you feel anything needs, or no, I shouldn't say we feel, what you feel needs to be added. I know this, like, again, this is, written from kind of my observation, but the more feedback I have from people, the more comprehensive I can make it, and hopefully the more helpful I can make it for people. Okay, Kimberly, let me scroll up and see. She says, am I making the right decision by leaving him? He's turned it into my fault. Let's see. I'm scrolling up here. He says, today he called me, and if I don't go back by the end of the week, he's going to throw all mine and my daughter's stuff in the trash. He took the car, and we have no way of getting around. He says, I left my husband the night I left, he threatened to take my daughter. And since I didn't come back, he's begging me to come back. He's abused me in every way. He's saying he will change. Can a narcissist really change? So Kimberly, let's look at it in terms of this way, okay? If you've ever heard any of my videos, my more recent videos, I've talked about there's what's known as the different stages of change. So here's the thing, when we ask whether or not another person can change, that can open up a whole debate, because you're going to hear people saying absolutely not, and then you're going to hear some people saying, oh sure, I knew, my uncle's brother's friend's cousin, he found God and he changed, or this person did change, and then that can keep a person confused. Well, if somebody else changed, maybe my husband can change too, and then they're right back to square one. So I prefer to kind of change up the question, not from can a person change, but where are they in the stages of change? Because that's one thing that we can know for certain. And we can know that for certain based on their behavior. So in the stages of change, there's the pre-contemplative stage, there's contemplative, there's planning, there's action, and then there's maintenance. And this isn't a normally used stage, but I think it's worth discussing. Then there's also termination. So there's 6 stages in total. When a person is at the pre-contemplative stage of change, they're not aware that there's a problem. So it's not even on the horizon. There's no thought of doing anything different. Contemplative stage, a person is aware that there is a problem. And so they're kind of thinking about weighing the pros and cons of what it would be like to actually make this change. The planning phase is, okay, I need to actually come up with a plan to make this change in my life. The action phase is taking action to put that plan into action. And then the maintenance is, this plan is now becoming a lifestyle. And the reason this last phase, the termination phase, isn't a phase that's normally used is because behavior, when our brains are, when we're so used to doing something a certain way, it's like we have grooves in our brains. It's like, when you drive down an old dirt road enough times, there's the tire tracks. You can see where the cars have driven through. Our brains are kind of the same way. And so when we make a change, this is why behavior, it's so difficult to break patterns of behavior, because there's a saying out there, it's called neurons that fire together wire together. And so when these pathways in our brain, this is how we behave, it's very difficult to switch and do something different. It takes a lot of conscious, concerted effort to actually make that change and to hold to it to make it into a lifestyle. And we always have to be on guard about potentially slipping back. This is why it's so challenging for people to kick an addiction or a bad habit of any kind, or to start a good habit of any kind. So with people, so let's back up and let's look at his behavior, okay? So he's saying that he will change. Well, talking about change isn't changing, right? That's just talk. And we all talk. I really want to lose 15 pounds. Well, right? So, okay, we all want, right? But talking about doing something and actually doing it are two very different things. If all of his behavior, if he's now blaming you for everything, he's threatening to throw your things out, he's already shown that he's a dangerous person in a lot of ways. Well, actually, let me back up. Let's talk about how he's being right now. He's threatening to throw out all of your things, and he's trying to limit, got rid of or he's holding onto the car, and he's being very threatening about taking your child and blaming you for everything. None of that are the actions of a person who's changing. So we can tell by his behavior, he has no accountability for his actions. He's blaming them all because he's blaming them all on you. He's not going to change because he thinks it's all your fault, that he doesn't have anything to change, that if you would just somehow be different, then he wouldn't treat you this way. Remember, I don't know if you were here earlier, but we were talking about that. This is the mindset of an abuser. Hey, if you just, didn't do these things, if, I started yelling because the baby was crying, or I cussed you out because you forgot to buy diapers, or I cussed you out because, or I hit you because I told you I was tired and I needed a nap and you needed to borrow the car, things like that. And so it can be confusing because we can think, well, maybe, is this my fault? If I just did all these things different. The thing is, though, it doesn't stop with an abusive person because they don't own any of their emotions. There's not that filter to where we all get frustrated and irritated, but we don't feel entitled and justified to lash out to another person. And as long as he feels, because when we do that, there's no boundary. And that's what's terrifying, because that boundary shouldn't have to be taught as an adult. That's stuff that people really get under control by about first grade. We all learn you can be frustrated, you can be upset, but it's not okay to hit or to spit or to bite or to kick or to call names or do any of that stuff. That's not how we handle problems. That's not how we handle frustration. And so for a person who's now an adult who still does not understand that, and this is how, when they're frustrated, angry, upset, what have you, that's what they do, that's a big problem. And there's a lot of kind of foundational pieces that they're missing, and that kind of stuff is dangerous, because a person should just they need to have that in place in order to be able to moderate their behavior. So so he is at the pre-contemplative stage of change. He's not sincerely aware that there's a problem. He might say, oh, yeah, I'll change, but he's just giving you lip service. He's not sincerely aware because he's blaming it all on you. So he's very far away from changing right now. Another thing that we do know about your situation is if he's been abusive to you in all different kinds of ways in the past, as it stands right now, that behavior is going to continue because he's not being accountable for his actions, and he thinks it's all your fault, which is the problem with the abusive mindset. Another thing that we know about abuse is that it's progressive and it tends to get worse with time, not better. So, and it goes back to that abuser's mentality of they feel entitled and justified. I got frustrated at you. That's why I yelled at you. I got frustrated. That's why I called you names. I got frustrated. That's why I pushed you down the stairs. I got frustrated. That's why, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going. So none of that is okay. A person can be angry and frustrated at whatever, no matter what you did. It's not even that you did anything, right? But even if you forgot to buy diapers, it doesn't make it okay for somebody to cuss you out and belittle you and to yell and scream and hit and kick and do all these things. That's not a workable adult response to their emotions. So, based on what you've said, I think leaving him sounds like a very good decision and the safest decision, because at this point you have an infant, and his behavior is sounds like he's been violent in the past, and this is just a risk that you can't take. And so if he really is serious about changing, which it doesn't sound like he is at all, but I would be like, he needs to prove it. And with him proving it, I would say, weekly therapy, and I would give it at least 2 years before you would even consider living with him again. Frankly, I wouldn't even consider being within arm's reach of him, because this it sounds like he's very dangerous, and this can escalate quickly, and it can put you and your daughter in serious harm. But at a minimum, if I'm just saying this because a lot of people, if they are thinking about going back, these are just some things to think about. I would give it at least 2 years of weekly therapy that's designed for domestic violence, for batterers. And I would request supervised visitation by somebody where he's not able to have your daughter alone. And I would just err on the side of caution. He would need, in order to even think that he has the possibility of changing, he has to show changed behavior for a sustained period of time. It's just like if an alcoholic were to say, I really want to quit drinking. Okay, that's great. Show me that you can quit drinking, and then we'll think I might entertain the idea of getting back together with you. But in order for me to trust that this person is now sober, they're going to need a plan. How are you going to get sober? You've talked about getting sober before, it's never lasted. Just talking about it and promising isn't the same thing as actually getting sober. So maybe this time around, it's like, okay, you know what? I'm going to go to 30 meetings in 30 days, AA meetings. I'm going to find a sponsor. I'm going to start going to therapy. My insurance allows 10 sessions. I'm going to go to those 10 sessions and see if I can get more approved. I'm going to get rid of all the alcohol in the house. I'm going to hang out with some friends that don't drink because it's too much of a trigger for me to go out with my buddies. I'm going to start working on different ways of coping. And that's the plan. And that's what I'm going to start doing. And I'll prove it to you. And then generally a person's going to need some clean time. Can they maintain that? Can they make it into a lifestyle? So this is change for anybody is incredibly difficult, especially for people that are struggling with addiction or abusive behavior. And the problem with abuser, here's the thing, is with change, change always is preceded by pain. We have to experience some sort of pain from our actions in order to be motivated to do something different. So just like an alcoholic isn't going to quit drinking for another person. They might say that they will, but really they might say, oh, you know what? I'm quitting drinking because I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I want to be there for her. But the reality is it's that pain of I'm not going to live, or my daughter's not going to have anything to do with me if I don't quit drinking. And I don't want that. So they're experiencing pain from their drinking enough to get them on track to stopping drinking. So with abusers, this is why the vast majority of the time, it's really just kind of pretty much 100% of, well, not even, it's anybody, abusers, addicts, alcoholics, anybody, people that aren't abusers, alcoholics, or addicts, anybody that's trying to make a change, if there's not that pain associated with their behavior, they're not going to change. And the vast majority of time, abusers don't experience pain because they're not accountable. It's in their mind, it's not their fault, it's not my fault. Look at what you made me do, right? I yelled at you because I saw the neighbor talking to you. I took a baseball bat and smashed up your car because I didn't like the way that your coworker was talking to you. Stuff like this. It's like there's not enough eggshells in the world that you can walk on to make a person moderate their behavior, because their behavior is the problem. Because life is full of issues and frustrations like that and things that happen. So does that make sense? Does that help? I know that was kind of a long-winded answer there, but I really wanted to make sure that you understood with the kind of stages of change and how, and just really get clarity about that. Erin says, my spouse lies to me repeatedly, told me her prior husband died in a car accident, fabricated a death certificate, cheated on me, lied about that, fabricated a lie detector test. What to do? Oh my goodness. If wow, if that is all accurate, I would say I would go meet with, you need to get out of there, because you're not in a marriage, you're in a manipulation. So if I were you, I would be concerned about your finances and your life. And I would go talk to an attorney ASAP and see about kind of coming up with an escape plan with what you need to do in order to start separating assets and getting out of there. And I wouldn't tell her ahead of time. I would be concerned as to what really happened to her prior husband. I would be concerned if she has life insurance on you. She's going to be on all of your assets if you're married. So I'd get another place lined up immediately and get out of there. And I wouldn't eat or drink anything she gives you. I wouldn't share a car with her. I wouldn't be alone with her. Those kind of lies that's a big deal. You're dealing with somebody who's really unpredictable and potentially very dangerous. Erin says, we separated and I try to get out, but she reels me back in. One of the things that you can do, Erin, is you really need to get crystal clear. He says, we've been married for 6 years with 2 little girls. I would encourage you to write out a list of reasons why you need to end this relationship, and then whenever she starts apologizing or acts, you know, says everything that you need her to say, I'd go back and read that list. How did you find out that all of this was a lie? And what does she say about it? Okay, let's see. Make Black communities great again has a question. Let me scroll up here. Okay, while I'm looking for the question, Zach brings up the very great comment that many psychopaths who are treated with therapy are even more likely to reoffend, and that sometimes they do get worse with therapy. Yes, and this is very much the case because when a person learns when they're able to better increase like their emotional intelligence, but the core of them is still abusive, then the result is that they just become better manipulators. So that's the thing. But if your boundaries are strong and you realize, you know what, there's no excuse for abuse, I will not have this in my life, I will not be treated like this, then the boundaries that you have are what's going to keep you safe from this person, because then you'll know. Like as soon as that starts up again, then you're done. Mike, I'm still looking for your question, communities. Mike was asking, why do you all keep saying him? Crazy woman next door has this physical, mental, verbal abuse daily. Is this more common in men? You know, you can see stats that will say that abusive behavior is more common in men. Generally, I forget what the stats normally are. About 70% of abusers tend to be male, 30% tend to be female. However, I disagree with that. I think how men and women tend to go about abusing in different ways. Women tend to be, it's more emotional and psychological and verbal, whereas I think the abuse that's normally studied tends to be more sexual and physical and financial, which I don't think that the data is accurately represented. So, but because of this, I think there's more awareness for women as far as abusive relationships go. A lot of every single informational everything that I've ever seen in my life has always been geared towards helping women, because abuse and this is, you have to realize too, this is a fairly new way of understanding behavior, because for a long time it was physical abuse wasn't even seen as physical abuse, and it's only really been probably in the last 50 or so years that it's truly been acknowledged that, yeah, this is indeed a problem. And at the time it was only physical abuse, and then at the time that understanding of who could be physically abusive and who could be physically abused, it was more thought of in terms of gender and strength and not in terms of power and control. So it was more about men beating up women or men beating up their wives, basically. And now our understanding has grown to encompass multiple forms of abuse and the damage that's being done. And then now the next wave is like, oh, okay, it's not just about gender and strength, it's about power and control. So size doesn't matter, it can be a woman, right? So she can be 5 feet tall and he can be 6'6", and she can be deadly. So it's a behavior. It's not about gender or strength, and anybody can be abused and anybody can be abusive. So But yes, anyways, the point is, because there's more information out there that's geared towards women, I think women by and large, not I think, it is, by and large, the vast majority of people that seek out videos like this or that seek help tend to be women. And it's by a landslide. I would say it's probably 95, 98% women. There really is a need for more outreach to be done with men, and to have more outreach being done just viewing men as potential targets and not just as, we need to teach men to not be abusive, because obviously, right, not all men are abusive. It's because it's not about gender and strength. So, but yeah, good question. Let's see here. Where is that question? It's difficult. I'm on my laptop and I don't have a mouse. So I'm trying to do this on this scroll pad here, and it's very difficult. Oh gosh. I guess if anybody can find, okay, I'm looking for the question from the Make Black Communities Strong Again. If anybody can find that question. Oh, thank you. Wait. Jack posted the tail end of it, says, do you have any advice for me? Is what Black Communities was asking, but okay, thank you. Thank you, Jack. The first half of that was from Make Black Communities Great Again, says, my last long-term relationship was greater than 12 years off and on, and this was over 4 years ago. I'm afraid I'll attract another narcissist again. Do you have any advice for me? Yes. So this is one of the biggest shifts that you can make in regaining your power and control in your life, is realizing what you do and don't have control over. So strangely enough, but we don't have control over who is attracted to us. You're going to attract a wide range of people. That's just how that goes. But what we do have control over is how long we let people in our lives and to what degree we let them into our lives. So, and if there's a pattern there. So for example, if you kind of realize, okay, this is what was attracting you to that narcissist. Okay, they were very charismatic, they were charming, it was a whirlwind, we moved really fast. They told me everything I wanted to hear. I felt like I was the center of their universe. I just felt so loved and important. And that's what sucked you in. Then realizing, okay, understandable, because that can really just, knock a person off their feet, kind of a thing. So the next time I'm going to go slower with a person, and then knowing, when deep down inside, what it feels like when you're being mistreated. It starts off, it's that feeling of confusion, and then it grows into irritation and frustration and kind of mental anguish where you're going back and forth. Is it me? Is it him? What's going on? I don't know. Did I is my communication bad? I don't know. And like, there's just all of this confusion involved that can't ever seem to be resolved. That's a problem. That's not normal. So realizing, okay, if there's a person in your life, you have your boundaries, you have your standards, you know how you expect to be treated and how you will be treated, and you're able to use either assertive communication with the other person and say, and be able to address things directly. I know you're really frustrated. You're frustrated and angry because your team lost the big game. But when you picked up the couch pillow and threw it across the room, even though it wasn't at me, I found that very intimidating, and it kind of scared me. And you're able to talk about it and talk it through, instead of them just discounting what you think about that, because we all have triggers, we all have things that upset us, this is part of that negotiation phase of a relationship, is kind of figuring out where other people's comfort is and limits are. And it's never, if a person's ever intimidating, that's a problem, because fear should never be a normal part of a relationship. So so knowing when something's going on that you're not comfortable with, knowing that you can address it in an assertive way, and knowing that you must have peace in your life, and that a relationship needs to be based on that mutuality. And there needs to be that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication present with both people, not just one-sided, not you just tripling up your efforts to try to compensate for their inability to communicate, that things are balanced, that you're able to talk about things, and that this person in this relationship feels emotionally safe and physically safe, of course, but emotionally safe, that you can share things with them, that they're not going to tease you about it or use it against you or belittle you or become intimidating or shaming or verbally abusive. So they truly, it feels like that this person should be a very good friend. So knowing kind of what a healthy relationship is, and how to make it that way, and then realizing, okay, and you know what, if I can't communicate with this person, if we can't get on the same page, if I find that I'm having all this mental anguish and I'm laying awake at night and I'm just sick to my stomach because these conversations keep going off the rails, and I can't tell if it's me or if it's them or what's going on, all of this stuff, if this relationship is absolutely draining you, then realizing, you know what, I've got to have my line in the sand. I've got to have these deal breakers with these things, because I have to have peace in my life, and I have to have a relationship that's nourishing. And I don't have these issues with other people. It just tends to be certain personality types. And you don't even need to get to the bottom of, is it me? Is it him? It's just, this isn't working. And I can't have this in my life. So, I have friends, I've dated people before, I haven't had these issues with, I can't have this. And then you drive on. So your boundaries and your standards will keep you safe from, from dating another narcissist. And if you do end up dating another one, it's those boundaries and standards, you're going to see problematic behavior a lot sooner. So they might slide under your radar, and you might find yourself in a relationship with one for a few months. This is why it's so important to go slow, and why I really encourage people to not have sex right away, because it's so much more difficult to leave when there's that emotional connection there. But to go slow and kind of qualify your buyer, I guess, like, is this person for me? You're focused on being choosy, not on being chosen. Is this what I'm looking for in my life? Could this person be a teammate? And hopefully they're asking themselves the same question. So, is this a person I can run a 3-legged race with, basically? Because that's life. That's life when you're in a relationship. And, and so then if you realize, oh boy, you know what, things were so great at first, because things generally always are. But once that kind of rosy, blush of that idealization wears off, and then the real relationship starts settling in, figuring out, okay, can we negotiate? Can we communicate effectively? Can we get on the same page with things? How does this work? Are both people being honest about their feelings and able to express themselves? And if this isn't working, then realizing, okay, you know what? And not getting so down on yourself for not seeing stuff sooner, because this is a skill. Like, when we wake up to this, we're like opening our eyes for the first time. So it takes some practice to really see other people's behavior, to see problematic behavior for what it is, and to see healthy behavior for what it is. And so even if you do find yourself in a friendship or a relationship with another problematic person, um, it happens. It happens. But it's more important as to how soon you see things clearly, and then what you do about it. So I hope that helps. But yes, your fear about that is, I think, everybody's fear after a relationship like this. I heard a great analogy the other day about relationships, and which I thought was really good. There's two different types of relationships out there: an A relationship and an H relationship. And an H relationship, so if you imagine two people facing each other and they both have their arms out, right? They're making the letter H. If you remember Sesame Street from back in the day, and they would, spell the letters out with their bodies, it's like that. So they're making the letter H. And if you're in a relationship, an H relationship, each person they're holding their own weight, and they have their arms out and they're connecting to this other person. Okay. And so if that relationship, because they're their own whole person, they have their own wants and needs and thoughts and feelings and opinions and hobbies and friends, they have their own thing going on outside of this relationship. And then when they're in the relationship, their hands are touching, they're connected, they're forming the letter H. If this relationship were to end, they're still standing. There's going to be that loss there, and they're going to have to grieve that loss, and there's going to be sadness, but they're not going to fall over, because they have they're grounded enough in themselves and in their own life. They haven't made this other person their whole life. Versus an A relationship, where you've got, again, two people arm to arm, but this time they're leaning forward at almost like a 45-degree angle, and they're really leaning on each other. And if something were to happen to one person, the other person just falls over. And that's not healthy. Like, that shows some things need to be a little bit balanced. It's easy to get into these A relationships, because these A relationships are the ones that are really celebrated in movies, and it can seem so romantic, and that's what love is. And, that we just lose ourselves in the other person completely, but it's not healthy. It's a sign, it's imbalance, right? So, something to think about. Let's see here. Let's scroll up. Joe says, would you tell a 13-year-old that her mother is gaslighting her? Oh, that's tough. I guess it depends on the dynamic that you have with 13. Is a 13-year-old your child? And is her mother your ex? If that's the case, that can be a little bit more complicated, because then it can be seen as like parental alienation and kind of poisoning the well, so to speak. If it's tricky doing things like this when there's minor children involved. I wouldn't use the term gaslighting. I would, if the child says something, I'm trying to even think of an example. If her mother just flat out lied to her about something, let's say, I don't know, the daughter the girl wanted to go to a school dance, and the mom said that she couldn't go for some reason, or lied and said the dance was canceled, but then said "Oh, no, it's not. I don't know where you got that from. You heard me wrong," kind of a thing. Um, Gaslighting can it can help to be undone by validating another person's truth and just putting the truth out there. So that's not a good example. Let me think of another example. Um, Actually, can you give me can you give me an example? Joe says, "It's my ex-girlfriend. She has the child believing that her memory is bad. She denies saying things and the child knows she said it." Okay, so what I would do in that situation is, um, I would point out that her mother has a pattern of doing this, um, that she says things and then denies that she said it, and that, uh, when people lie like that and they say, "Oh, you heard me incorrectly," or "I never said that," then it can help for the girl to write things down. And it can also help to just acknowledge that when people lie like that, it's because they're not comfortable with the truth. And when people lie like that, it can be so damaging because then it can make us question whether or not we're going crazy. If we heard them right, and I would just address it directly. So if she's got a pattern of it and your daughter's onto it, and like, why does mom do this? Like she says one thing, but then she says that she never said that. Like that's so crazy making. To just validate her. Yeah, that really is crazy making. Yeah, that really is frustrating. Yeah. Yep. I don't know why your mother does that. She lies because it must be because she's not comfortable with the truth for whatever reason. But it's good that you're aware that she does this. I just want you to know that it's not you, because I've noticed this too, or however you want to phrase it. Well, okay, and then your daughter is agreeing that her memory is bad. She's been doing it a while. I just caught it towards the end of the relationship. I figured the smartest thing was to drop the term on the adolescent. I mean, you could. It can be a fine line to walk, because then, I mean, you're dealing with a person, her mother, people that lie like that and who manipulate like that. You're not dealing with an emotionally mature person. And so any accountability, because she's trying to shirk accountability. And so if that's brought to her attention, she's going to become very defensive and very accusatory and say that you're manipulative. Um, because you're not dealing with an emotionally mature person who's in reality either. So it's kind of a losing situation for you to be in. And that's kind of the challenge with it. Uh, it's so tricky with kids, because if it gets back to her mom, because it probably will, then it's like kicking a bee's nest. So you could, this is, you could be a little more subtle about it. And this is going to seem, I guess, kind of manipulative in its own right. But I think sometimes you have to kind of fight fire with fire. And the intention here is good. It's not to get your way, it's not to cause harm. You know, uh, you could start listening to some YouTube videos about gaslighting, and then use those to open up a discussion with your daughter. So she just kind of, accidentally, you know what I'm saying? Like you're just watching this stuff, but you're kind of planning it to where you want her to hear what you're listening to. So like you're cooking dinner, for example, and you've got some YouTube videos on about gaslighting. And then you mention it. Oh, hey, I found these videos. I, if she is like, hey, what are you listening to? And you talk about it. And then using that to kind of open up the discussion. So that might be a kind of in a roundabout way to start the conversation and see if she has any questions about anything. And I would really take the approach of just trying to validate her experience and not coming from a place of not being judgmental or necessarily talking bad about her mom, but just validating her experience. Because here's the thing, if you start talking bad about her mom, then she's going to get defensive, and it's not going to help. And it can also be considered parental alienation. So Aaron says, how do you let go from a narcissist in a marriage when young kids are involved? When I'm with the kids, it eats me up because they don't have both of us living together. And Joe, I missed what you had said before about how you found out. Or maybe am I thinking of somebody else with the little kids with the spouse who was lying? Or do I have the right person? I'll just address this question the best I can, Joe. With what, I'm sorry, Aaron. God, it's been a long day. I'm so sorry. He said, how do you let go of a narcissist in a marriage when young kids are involved? And then Joe, I believe, was the guy with the kids, with the person who had lied about the death certificate and that ex and the car accident and all that kind of stuff, all kinds of lies, if I remember. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Okay, so Aaron was saying, how do you let go from a narcissist when young kids are involved? When I'm with the kids, it eats me up that they don't have both of us living together. Having, a loving, stable two-parent home is wonderful to raise children in, to provide that sense of support. That's great. If one of the parents is dangerous or destructive, then it's a problem. And really trying to limit the amount of exposure, damage that's being done to the children is very important. So I think it's kind of getting clear about, this is the fantasy we had about being married and having children with this person, but the reality that we're living is very different. And so we can only work with reality. But letting the death of that fantasy happen, that's what keeps people stuck for so long. Is they think, I want to stay in this relationship for the kids. I want them to know their other parent. I feel terrible. The kids cry. The kids, they don't like this, and it can just be so difficult in so many ways. But I think it's really, in every situation is different, but it's kind of knowing, okay, what is in the best interest of the children, and what can you do? But you letting go from an abusive spouse is you being self-protective. This isn't you being the bad guy. Even though she might not see it that way, even though the kids might not currently see it that way. And having to really explain to the kids about really working on with them, setting boundaries when they're with you, a lot of it's going to have to be kind of damage control. And these are the family rules that we have. And this is how we treat each other, and really making a concerted effort to be a role model for that, and showing them, because you're probably going to see behaviors from them. And if they're acting out, okay, if you're frustrated, you're angry, you've got to let me know what's going on. Use your words. How are you feeling right now? Really making a point to connect with your children. If you can do, I don't know, either eating dinner at the table at least a couple nights a week, or just spending time to, I don't know, take your kids out to the park or go have a soda together or something where it's just one-on-one time. Or I guess one-on-two. I think there's two little girls, right? So you're spending time with them, you're talking about them, you're talking about, you're opening up this conversation about how do they feel, like what was the high point of their day, what was the low point of their day, what are they feeling, is anything frustrating them, just really exploring emotions like that. And letting them know that they can talk to you about things, and that it's okay, that they're probably going to have a lot of mixed emotions. And they might want to try to protect you and not talk about their mom. And letting them know that you're their father, that you're the adult, you're an adult, and that your job is to look out for them, and that it's okay, that you can handle. They don't need to hide things that are going on, how they feel about their mom, or things that are going on with their mom, and just letting them know, you're loved and you're valued, and this is a safe place here. And this is, in offering that stability and that predictability. This is how we treat each other in this house. So it's okay for you to get frustrated and angry, but it's not okay for you to go, punch a hole through a door, or to go attack your sister, or to go, bite her, or what I mean? Like, you're really breaking it down for the kids. It's okay that you feel this way, but let's think of other ways that you can express those feelings besides pulling your sister's hair, or biting, or doing whatever. Okay, you could, I don't know, go to your room and turn up some music. You could go take a shower, or to go take a bath. You could tell your sister how you feel. You could go draw a picture. You could go, you could do some jumping jacks. Like, what can you do to kind of get those feelings out in a way that's not hurtful towards other people or towards yourself? There's a great book out there. It's one of the few books that I've really come across on the topic of kind of handling divorce and manipulative with, like, a high conflict, we'll say high conflict parent. And it's called Divorce Poison. And I want to say it's Robert Warshaw, I believe. Divorce Poison. Fantastic book. Talks about that. It's a great book also for family members so if they have, if your spouse or ex-spouse is high conflict and difficult and manipulative, what the surrounding family can also do to kind of neutralize that and be supportive. But I guess, okay, kids are 2 and 5. Okay, good job. Erin says, yeah, I do all these things when they're with me, so I'm headed in the right direction. Absolutely. The number one thing with kids is quality time, and letting them know that you love them and that you value them. That's the number one thing. Because if they don't, how does the saying go? People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And kids are very much that way. They're really not going to be receptive to any type of rules or discipline or advice or structure or anything that you have to say until they know that you love them, that you're in their corner, that they can trust you. And once they know that, you're that you care about them and you want their best interest and that you're an emotionally safe person, there's just makes everything so much easier. And cultivating that relationship with them, taking time to get on the floor and play Legos, or to, I guess that's a little young for the 2-year-old, but, to play with them or to do bedtime stories or to um, just taking some time to have fun and bonding with them it's so important because it really, especially at that age, it's about how how you're making them feel and making sure that they're feeling that you're emotionally safe, that they can trust you, um, you know, that they can rely on dad, that dad's a good guy. It's important. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Big D says, when I was young, my dad would upset me so much, I would punch the wall. I broke a portion of it. It's an old house and the wall is made of solid wood. Wow. Yeah, that's when it's time to get some distance when things are so heated like that. And it's so hard for kids, because they're like, I have nowhere to really go. Um, and yeah, so sorry that you had to go through that. That's such a tough way to grow up. Aaron says, I just need to let go of the wife, thinking she can change, holding on to lies from months ago. I guess that can't change. Well, Aaron, we were talking earlier about the different stages of change, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to that part of the video, and thinking about it's not about whether or not she can change, it's about where she currently is in the stages of change. And if we're staying in a relationship based on what we hope it could maybe be someday, then that's the fantasy. And our life is reality, and life will not work if we're living in fantasy. Living in fantasy, it gives us relief in the short term because it just kind of um, it's a way that we can kind of delude ourselves into not changing anything. But the more we're able to comfortably live in reality and realize, okay, this person's just not changing, they're telling me everything I want to hear, where is my line in the sand with that? That's what will set you free. Because when we live in a fantasy, we're just postponing the pain. We live in reality, we're dealing with the pain and we're pushing through. So I guess the point of that is there's pain that comes from either the fantasy or the reality, but the pain from the reality lasts less, but it doesn't feel like that at the time, if that makes any sense. Um, let's see here. JJ, I've never thought of it that way, but I guess you could say that. Yeah. JJ says, isn't that disassociating? Yeah, I guess it is. When we're living, and here's the thing, we all do this, right? It's very easy to, and daydreaming and living in fantasy isn't a bad thing necessarily, but it is if it's impacting our reality. So it's good to have hopes and dreams and goals and to daydream and to think, what if, to an extent. But if we're staying in a situation that's clearly not that and is not even on the path to being that, then yes, that's delusion and we're in fantasy. So yeah, we're separating ourselves from reality and kind of creating this fantasy reality that's not there. Joe asks, what are your favorite books concerning narcissists or manipulative people? Hmm. There's so many. Let's see. Um, I think Psychopath Free is a fantastic book. I think that if you're brand new, I think Psychopath Free can give a person the validation that they've been seeking. If your relationship followed that pattern, not every single relationship with a psychopath or a narcissist follows that pattern, but I would say a lot of them do, what he describes in that book. If you're brand new to this topic and want kind of a more overview of it, I would say my first book, Start Here. You can find that on Amazon under Dana Morningstar. Um, that book has all like the terminology, the cycle of abuse. It explains, it's a crash course in understanding this topic. So I think that's a pretty, I'm biased because I wrote it, but I would say it's a pretty good overview of what's up with all of this. And I would say my third book, The Narcissist's Playbook, is really comprehensive as far as understanding manipulative people and how to break free from manipulation and what manipulation is and what it isn't. Um, I really there's a book by Adeline Birch. It's called Boundaries After a Pathological Relationship. I think that one's fantastic. It's a short read, but it's clear, it's concise, great book. I don't know. I'll be curious to see what you guys have to say as far as books that you would recommend. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to do one more question and then I'm going to actually sign off for tonight because I didn't realize it was so late. I was only going to go for an hour and we're 2 hours and 10 minutes in and I've got to do laundry still and pack and all this. So Puka's mom asks about empaths and narcissists and says empaths and narcissists seem to go together. We're the only ones that will put up with them. Let's discuss this for a little bit. Let's make the distinction here because kind of yes and no with that. So empaths are people that have a really high degree of empathy. And when this is such a big topic, without healthy boundaries, that high degree of empathy can really cause a lot of damage in a person's life because then they are they're around dangerous and destructive people and they kind of keep projecting this idea that everybody is inherently good and everybody inherently has the same morals and motivations, and that if they can just get down to like the good part of this person, if they can just save them kind of a thing, that this person can change. And so I guess what I'm saying is having a high degree of empathy in itself is not a problem. It is a problem if there's not solid, healthy boundaries in place. And this is a lesson that many of us that have a high degree of empathy have to learn the hard way, unfortunately. There's also a third part to this is with codependency. So I would say having a high degree of empathy, there's a lot of overlap with that. So I would say a lot of people that consider themselves empaths also have there's a lot of codependency going on. But not every empath is codependent, and not every codependent is an empath. So it can be a little bit difficult to sort out. But when an empath is truly empowered and they're able to get those boundaries in place, then it can really just be a beautiful gift to have, because there is that ability to relate to kind of other living things in general with a high degree of compassion and appreciation. And you don't have to sink yourself in order to help them swim, kind of a thing. So it comes from more of a place of empowerment, more so than a place of rescuing, when those healthy boundaries are in place. When those healthy boundaries aren't in place, it's from a place of this more of the codependent side of things, which is that feeling of I've got to rescue these other people and they need me and I can't let them, I can't let them go, kind of a thing. So does that kind of answer that? So. Mike says, this is better than Fox News. I subscribed. How often do you all do this? Oh, that's funny. We normally do this every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we normally go for about 3 hours. So, and we normally do like a guided meditation thing at the end, but I am running way late and way over on time. So I'm just going to call it a night. But I hope to see you guys next week, Wednesday. And then we'll also do book club. So we normally do book club. Book club is normally the last Thursday of every month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that goes for, I don't know, sometimes a couple hours. And we discuss different books every month that are related to this topic. So yes, I hope you guys will join us next week for the live stream, Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Thursday night, hopefully book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that said, thank you guys so much for being here and for sharing. It was actually really cool, but there's quite a few guys on here tonight, which is really great to see. So thanks everybody for your fantastic questions and for supporting each other and just helping this place be an empowering, helpful place. Pamela, real quick, ask, what is this week's book? Book club this month is called The Confidence Game by Maria. It's a very Russian sounding last name. I want to say it's like Kornikova or something like that. But yeah, The Confidence Game. So we'll be discussing that book. So, okay, you guys, wonderful night. Just lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from all this. So take care. I'll be thinking about you. Good night.